AITA for getting revenge on friend when she charged us for dinner. She found a rich guy, invited us to her house for dinner, ordered us food, and made us pay for it. So I 29 female have this friend, let's call her Tina 28 female, who's always been a bit extra. I've known her for years, and she's part of a larger friend group I regularly hang out with. Tina has always been the flashy, self-proclaimed influencer type, the kind who constantly posts curated photos of her outfits, her latest beauty treatments, her sponsored products, her weekend getaways, her designer bags, you name it. Every time we hang out, she somehow finds a way to steer every conversation back to herself. If someone mentions they had a tough week, she'd jump in with, "That reminds me of when I was traveling through the Amalfi Coast and had to deal with customs. Ugh, it was so stressful, I swear." That's just how she is. For the most part, the rest of us in the group just smile, nod, and let her rattle on. It's never been malicious or mean-spirited, just really self-centered. But recently, she leveled up. Tina started dating this incredibly wealthy man, think multimillionaire with a gated mansion, private security, a pool house, and even a small team of staff. Of course, she documented every step of this new chapter on social media. From photos of his marble staircase to boomerangs of champagne glasses beside his infinity pool, she was living it up. She gushed about him constantly, how generous he was, how smart, how connected. And soon enough, she moved into his home and was calling it their house. A few weeks ago, Tina sent a message in our group chat that sounded more formal than her usual vibe. She said she wanted to host a dinner at her new home and invite all of us to meet her boyfriend and see the place. She said something like, "I want to invite all of you for dinner at my new house with my BF. You have to come see it." That message set a certain expectation. It sounded like she was hosting us, like we were being invited as guests to enjoy a meal, meet her new partner, and hang out in the mansion she's been bragging about non-stop. We all agreed to come. The drive out there was long. The mansion was on the outskirts of the city, nestled in one of those upscale neighborhoods where every house looks like a celebrity lives there. When we arrived, I won't lie, it was breathtaking. Massive front doors, an entryway that echoed when you walked through it, chandeliers, art on the walls that looked like it belonged in a gallery, and floor-to-ceiling windows that gave a perfect view of the hills. Her boyfriend greeted us briefly, was polite and charming, but said he had to finish up some paperwork and would retreat to his study for the night. Totally fine, we were there for Tina anyway. Tina showed us around like she was the owner of the place. She walked us through the spa room, the wine cellar, the home theater, everything. She kept gushing about how she was getting used to the luxurious lifestyle and how she had a closet just for her handbags now. We were smiling and laughing along. But by the time the tour ended, we were hungry. We had driven for nearly an hour and hadn't been offered so much as a glass of water since we arrived. I assumed dinner would be served soon, maybe something catered or even something light prepared by the staff. I wasn't expecting a 5-star meal, but anything, really. Instead, Tina casually pulled out her phone and said, "Okay, I'll be ordering food and drinks from a nearby mart. Tell me what you want and I'll get it delivered here." That was the moment I mentally tilted my head in confusion. I thought it was strange that she was just now ordering food, especially when she knew we were coming specifically for dinner. I mean, if I had friends coming over to my house for dinner, even my tiny apartment, I'd at least have snacks or drinks ready in advance. And here we were, standing in a multi-million-dollar mansion surrounded by staff, and Tina was pulling up a delivery app to order individual meals on the spot. Still, I shrugged it off. Maybe this was just how she rolled. So we gave her our orders, and waited. The food took a while to arrive, and when it finally did, it was lukewarm and came in plastic containers. Not that I minded eating takeaway, but the whole situation was just odd. No drinks were served unless we ordered them. No water, no wine, not even a toast to the new house. We just ate quietly in her oversized kitchen, sitting around a marble island that probably cost more than my car. The rest of the evening was uneventful. We sat around, chatted a bit, but the mood had shifted. Everyone seemed slightly uncomfortable, though no one said anything outright. After we left and got home, I was ready to move on from the night and chalk it up to another, Tina being Tina, experience. But then, about an hour later, Tina sent a text to the group chat. It was a breakdown of exactly what each of us had ordered for dinner and how much it cost. There was even a line about the delivery fee being split evenly. And then came the message, please transfer the amount to me ASAP, thanks. I stared at the message in disbelief. I was honestly more stunned than angry at first. She had invited us to her mansion under the pretense of hosting a dinner, and not only did she not prepare anything in advance, but she also made us pay for the mediocre takeaway meal we ate off of disposable plates. She didn't even offer us a drink. I wasn't expecting a lavish meal or a gift bag on the way out, but basic hospitality. A glass of wine. A pitcher of water. A smile and a, dinner's on me, thanks for coming. Something. I went ahead and transferred her the $16.80 for my meal. But I couldn't help myself. I sent a message to the group chat that said, "Oh wow, if I knew we were all paying for our individual meals, we could have just met at a restaurant for dinner. I guess all that wealth in the house was just for show." I know it was sarcastic. I know it had bite. But I couldn't pretend like this whole thing wasn't the most tone-deaf, performative, fake hostess move I had ever seen. Tina didn't respond to my message directly, but she did like it with the haha reaction, which made it feel even weirder. A couple of the others sent me private messages agreeing with me, saying they also felt uncomfortable but didn't want to make a scene. Now I'm wondering, did I go too far? Am I the asshole for calling her out, even if it was passive-aggressively, after she pulled such a bizarre move? Or was I justified in feeling misled and annoyed? Let me know, am I the asshole? Update 1. I truly thought that bizarre evening would just fade into the list of classic Tina moments we all privately laughed about but never addressed out loud. But, about a week after that infamous DIY dinner night, Tina messaged the group chat again. This time, the tone was different. Not her usual exclamation point-laden confidence. It was oddly subdued, almost humble. She wrote, "Hey ladies, I've been thinking a lot about the dinner at my place and I realize it may not have come across the way I intended. I really value you all and want to make it right. Can I please take everyone out to dinner this Friday? My treat, I promise." Now, at first, we all had to reread the message because this level of self-awareness was not typically part of the Tina brand. But hey, credit where credit is due. It seemed like she had genuinely reflected and wanted to make amends. And honestly, despite everything, our group is pretty forgiving. We've been friends for a long time, and we try to give each other the benefit of the doubt. So we responded with varying degrees of "sure" and "sounds great," while mentally preparing ourselves for whatever flavor of chaos she might serve next. Friday arrived and we met up at this absolutely stunning rooftop restaurant downtown. It was one of those trendy places with panoramic skyline views, a curated cocktail list, moody lighting, and a DJ spinning chill beats in the background. It was the kind of place that shows up on influencers' feeds with #vibes and geotags. Tina arrived right on time, surprising in itself, and she looked effortlessly put together, as always. But something was different. She was low-key. No dramatic entrances, no gushing about her boyfriend's business deals, no 10-minute monologue about her outfit details or skincare routine. She actually asked other people how they were doing. She listened. She laughed at other people's jokes. She even complimented our outfits without turning it into a segue about her latest brand collab. Honestly, the dinner started off beautifully. The food was amazing, artfully plated, flavorful, worth every dollar. The cocktails were strong but smooth. The conversation flowed like it hadn't in months. We were genuinely enjoying each other's company, and it felt, for the first time in a long time, like Tina was just one of the girls again. No walls of ego, no influencer persona, just us. We clinked glasses, toasted to friendship, and even took a cute group photo under the string lights. Then, inevitably, the check came. It was delivered discreetly, slid onto the table by the waiter who placed it gently in front of Tina. She smiled sweetly, made eye contact with no one, then stood up, casually grabbed her purse, and said something that I will never forget. "Okay, so ladies, since I organized this and brought everyone together, this dinner was kind of my gesture of reconciliation, but you'll need to split the bill among yourselves, okay? I have to run, early Pilates." And with that, she waved, turned around, and walked out. Just left. Like she was some glamorous philanthropist who had already done her part by gracing us with her presence and coordinating the logistics of an apology dinner. We sat there in stunned silence. The waiter hadn't even walked away yet. A full 10 seconds passed with no one moving, no one speaking, just mouths slightly open and eyes darting between each other like we were trying to confirm that this was, in fact, real life. Finally, one of our friends leaned back in her chair, let out a quiet sigh, and said what we were all thinking, "You've got to be kidding me." But she wasn't. The check sat on the table like a physical embodiment of betrayal. All that warmth and humility. Apparently, just a carefully crafted act, an episode of the Tina show with a surprise twist ending. We were so caught off guard that no one even had the energy to be angry right away. It was just pure disbelief. We slowly divvied up the check in silence, splitting the bill like we were back in college trying to stretch our student budgets, not seasoned adults dealing with someone who literally lives in a gated estate with staff and private chefs. The whole thing felt surreal. We had come out that night thinking Tina had turned a new leaf. We thought the mansion dinner debacle had actually made her realize that friendship is about sincerity, not spectacle. We thought, naively, that maybe, just this once, she had gotten the message. We were wrong, we paid the bill again. Update 2. After the din, I honestly thought our friend group had hit peak Tina. It was the kind of moment that should have been the climax in a bad sitcom episode, the part where the laugh track plays and everyone throws their hands up in exasperation. Tina had invited us out under the pretense of mending fences, smoothing things over, making up for the whole, cold takeout at the mansion and invoice afterward, fiasco. She had presented herself as this newly self-aware version of herself, softened by reflection and ready to make things right. We believed it. Not because she had a flawless track record, far from it, but because we wanted to. We were tired, and we missed the version of our friend group that didn't feel like a carefully curated performance every time she showed up. So when she left us with the check again, mid-sentence and mid-sip of her second cocktail, citing an early Pilates class as if that justified abandoning her promise, it wasn't just disappointing, it was surreal. It wasn't just tone-deaf. It wasn't even just inconsiderate. It was so blatantly self-absorbed that it bordered on performance art. Like she had somehow managed to become a caricature of herself, wearing narcissism like a designer scarf. There was something almost impressive about how seamlessly she executed the bait-and switch. We didn't even see it coming, not because it was so subtle, but because we assumed even Tina wouldn't dare to repeat the exact same move that had already put her in hot water. We were wrong. We left the restaurant quieter than usual. No one ranted in the Uber or started a voice note rant in the group chat. It was more like the silence of people who had finally reached the ceiling of their patience. Everyone paid their portion without protest, but you could feel it in the air, something had shifted. It was no longer just Tina being Tina. It was Tina crossing a line we didn't even realize we had drawn. 2 days later, when Madison messaged me with that now iconic sentence, "Honestly, I feel like we should pull a reverse Tina on her," I laughed harder than I had in weeks. Not just because the idea was hilarious, but because it immediately felt cathartic. It was a spark of levity in the middle of our collective frustration. I figured it would be one of those things we joked about once or twice and then moved on from, but the more we turned it over in our chats, the more it became clear that we weren't just blowing off steam. This idea had legs. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't mean-spirited. It was about perspective. About mirroring back to Tina, with gentle precision, the exact kind of behavior that had driven a wedge into the middle of our dynamic. I volunteered to host. My apartment was the obvious choice. It's not flashy or large, but it's cozy and lived in, the kind of space where people kick off their shoes and curl up with a blanket. A stark contrast to Tina's echoing marble monstrosity of a mansion that felt more like a museum with velvet ropes than a home. I started planning a menu, something simple, comforting, homemade. A big pot of pasta, a few trays of roasted vegetables, garlic bread, maybe some dips. Madison said she'd bring a couple of bottles of wine, another friend offered to bake something sweet, and the rest volunteered to round things out. It was teamwork. Collaboration. No one was posturing. No one was curating their image. It was the kind of low-key planning that Tina always claimed to be part of, but never actually did. The kind of night where everyone contributed because they wanted to, not because they were being used to decorate someone else's Instagram story. We sent the invitation as a casual message, nothing too grand. Just a suggestion to hang out, decompress, catch up. Girls' night in. No pressure. The kind of vibe that would sound beneath Tina if we'd called it what it really was. But she was surprisingly quick to accept. Her message was practically effusive, heart emojis, all caps excitement, a follow-up picture of a silky dress she wanted our opinion on. It was already obvious she hadn't clocked the tone. She was still convinced she was the star of the evening, even when she hadn't read the script. Friday rolled around and, like clockwork, Tina showed up fashionably late. Not that we were surprised. She walked into my apartment like she was stepping onto a set, heels that were unnecessary indoors, makeup that had clearly taken hours, and hair that gleamed like it had been blessed by a team of professionals. She breezed in, barely acknowledging how underdressed the rest of us were in comparison, and immediately started her usual routine, air kisses, compliments that somehow still made her the center of attention, a half-shouted anecdote about nearly being cast on a reality show but turning it down for the sake of her emotional well-being. The rest of us were barefoot, in socks or fluffy slippers, lounging on the couch with wine glasses half full and laughter already bouncing off the walls. We greeted her like we would any other guest, warm but restrained. Let her spin her stories, let her think she was leading the evening. No one interrupted her. No one challenged her. We just let her talk, the way we always did. Dinner was served around 7:30. I ladled pasta into bowls, passed plates around, made sure everyone had a little bit of everything. Compliments were thrown out casually, not exaggerated, not performative, just enough to keep the energy friendly. Tina ate with enthusiasm, nodding between bites, still tossing out humble brags like breadcrumbs. She had no clue. Not the faintest idea that this was a setup, not in the malicious sense, but in the carefully orchestrated social mirror kind of way. And when the time came, when the plates were scraped clean and the last sip of wine had been taken, I quietly stepped away into the kitchen and retrieved the piece de resistance, the printed bill. Thick cardstock, clean font, itemized. A line for each dish and contribution, and at the bottom, a split total. Including, of course, the unpaid share of her previous invitation to the rooftop dinner. It was calm. Professional. I didn't storm in or make a show of it. I simply walked back into the room, paper in hand, and handed it to her with a smile I couldn't quite keep from curving at the edges. Update 3. The morning after what we now collectively refer to as the Reverse Tina dinner, I was lounging in bed with a cup of coffee, still emotionally digesting the events of the night before. My apartment was quiet again, but the memory of Tina's stunned expression still lingered in the corners of the living room like perfume. It had been a strange evening, fun, cathartic, and slightly uncomfortable in the way all true confrontations are, even the playful ones. No one had reached out since she left. No dramatic texts. No voice messages. Just a kind of collective, wordless agreement that we'd said what needed to be said and that the ball, for once, wasn't in our court anymore. I was half scrolling through my phone, checking notifications, when I saw a DM request from an account I didn't recognize. The profile photo was minimal, just a photo of a black dog lying in the sun, and the username was something like DJ Thompson. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. When I opened the message, I saw a note that made me sit up straighter in bed. It was from David, Tina's boyfriend. He introduced himself right away, said he hoped it was okay that he was reaching out directly. He explained that he had heard from Tina that something went wrong with dinner, but it hadn't been until the previous night, when she came home clearly upset, that he'd gotten the full story. He said she had described the gathering at my apartment as a betrayal, that she had felt ganged up on, ambushed, misunderstood. But after asking a few follow-up questions, and apparently talking to Madison directly, he'd gotten a far more honest and complete version of events. Then he said something that genuinely caught me off guard. He wrote that he was embarrassed by how it all went down. Not just by Tina's actions, but by how disconnected from reality her behavior had been, especially considering how often she talked about valuing her friendships and how proud she was of her social circle. He said that while he hadn't been directly involved in any of it, he still felt responsible in some way. As her partner. As someone who had watched these events unfold in real time but hadn't realized the depth of what was happening. He said he had already transferred enough money to cover both the restaurant dinner and the meal at my place. He even broke it down in the message, an exact total, with a note saying it included tax and tip, because, as he put it, if we're correcting things, we might as well do it properly. That alone would have been enough. But then he added that he had sat down with Tina that morning and had a real conversation. Not the kind she usually brushed off or twisted into a self-pity narrative, but a grounded, uncomfortable, necessary talk about perception versus reality. About how she treats the people closest to her. About how long she could get away with believing that charm and presence could substitute for generosity and accountability. He said it hadn't been easy. She cried. She got defensive. She tried to make excuses. But something finally clicked. He said that she understood now why it wasn't okay. Why saying, "my treat," and then leaving others with the bill wasn't quirky or harmless, it was disrespectful. That extending an invitation meant taking on a certain responsibility, even if it wasn't extravagant or expensive. That friendship wasn't just about showing up, but how you show up. Then he thanked me, for being patient with her, for giving her more chances than most would have, for not cutting her off completely. He said Tina was quiet now, reflective in a way he hadn't seen before, and that he didn't know what would come next, but she was thinking. Actually thinking. When I finished reading the message, I didn't know how to feel. It was like an emotional cocktail of closure, vindication, surprise, and a touch of guilt. I hadn't expected David to be involved at all, let alone step in with such humility and awareness. This was a man who lived in a mansion with a woman who considered a midweek hair appointment a full-time job, and here he was, apologizing on her behalf, making amends, doing the exact thing Tina had failed to do, twice. I shared the message with the rest of the group, and the reactions were almost identical. A few were stunned. A few were skeptical. Madison just sent back a simple, "wow," and a screenshot of the transfer receipt David had included in the DM. The money had already hit her account. She forwarded the appropriate shares to the rest of us, along with a quick message that just said, "Closure, anyone?" Since then, Tina's been quiet. Not gone, she hasn't left the group chat, hasn't unfollowed anyone, hasn't made a dramatic exit, but quiet. No new posts. No stories. Not even one of her usual morning latte shots or gym mirror selfies with "rise and grind" captions. For someone who once documented every outfit and facial expression, the silence is jarring. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes. If this is an ego bruised or an ego evolving. If she's silently regrouping or quietly reflecting. If this was just a passing wave of shame or the first time she's ever really looked in the mirror without adjusting the lighting. What I do know is this, the weight of it all feels lifted. We didn't have to scream, or cut her off, or wage war. She saw it and someone, somehow, helped her understand. We got our closure and our money back.